Imagine waking up tomorrow to find that your bank account has only enough money to last a few days. Suddenly, every decision feels heavier. You hesitate before buying groceries. You ignore that strange noise coming from your car. You snap at people you love over things that normally wouldn't bother you. Here's the surprising part. Financial stress doesn't just affect your wallet. It actually changes the way your brain makes decisions. Scientists have discovered that when money becomes a constant source of anxiety, our brains begin to prioritize survival over strategy. And that can trap us in a cycle that's incredibly difficult to escape. Today, we're going inside the psychology and neuroscience of financial stress and discovering why worrying about money can quietly influence almost every choice you make. Most people think financial stress is simply not having enough money, but that's only part of the story. Financial stress is the persistent fear that your resources won't meet your needs. It isn't determined solely by income. Someone earning six figures can experience it. Someone with a modest salary but stable finances may not. The real issue is uncertainty. When your brain can't predict whether tomorrow's bills will be paid, it treats the situation as a threat. And the human brain evolved to respond to threats with one goal: survive first, plan later. When financial anxiety becomes constant, your brain releases stress hormones like cortisol. In small doses, cortisol is useful. It keeps you alert during emergencies. But when it remains elevated for weeks or months, it begins affecting the very parts of your brain responsible for judgment. The prefrontal cortex, the region involved in planning, self-control, and long-term thinking, becomes less effective. Meanwhile, the emotional centers of the brain become more active. It's like trying to drive a car where the steering wheel responds slower while the accelerator becomes more sensitive. You react faster, but you think less clearly. Psychologists call this the scarcity mindset. When something feels scarce, money, time, food, your attention becomes locked onto that shortage. Imagine trying to solve a complex puzzle while someone continuously reminds you that the rent is due tomorrow. Part of your mental energy is always occupied. Researchers describe this as a reduction in mental bandwidth. It's not that people become less intelligent. Their brain simply has fewer resources available for everything else. That means poorer concentration, more mistakes, and weaker long-term planning. Financial stress rarely announces itself dramatically. Instead, it quietly reshapes ordinary decisions. You postpone preventive healthcare because today's bill feels more urgent. You choose the cheapest option instead of the best value. You delay learning new skills because immediate expenses dominate your attention. Ironically, many of these decisions create even larger costs later. The short-term solution slowly becomes the long-term problem. Here's something that seems contradictory. If people are stressed about money, why do some spend impulsively? Because stress doesn't only create fear, it also creates a craving for relief. Buying something new can temporarily activate the brain's reward system. For a few moments, the anxiety fades. But once the acceptance disappears, the financial reality remains. Sometimes it's even worse. This is why emotional spending often increases during periods of financial pressure. It's not irrational. It's the brain searching for temporary comfort. Think about how many financial choices adults make every week. Can I afford this? Should I wait? Should I use savings? Should I borrow? Every decision consumes mental energy. As the day goes on, your brain becomes tired. Psychologists call this decision fatigue. When it appears, people often choose whatever provides the quickest escape rather than the smartest outcome. That's why stressful financial situations often produce decisions that seem confusing in hindsight. Money stress doesn't stay inside your bank account. It enters conversations. Families experiencing financial pressure often report more arguments, not because money changes personality, but because chronic stress lowers patience and emotional control. Small disagreements suddenly feel much larger. Communication becomes harder, and relationships absorb the emotional cost. The encouraging news is this: understanding the psychology of financial stress gives you power over it. The goal isn't to eliminate every financial problem overnight. It's to reduce uncertainty. Simple habits help more than most people realize. Creating a realistic budget, building even a small emergency fund, automating savings, avoiding unnecessary financial decisions when you're emotionally overwhelmed, and asking for professional financial advice when needed. Each of these actions reduces the cognitive load your brain carries every day. Over time, your mind regains the bandwidth needed for better decisions. Financial stress isn't simply about numbers on a screen. It's about attention, emotion, biology, and the invisible ways our brains adapt when survival feels uncertain. The next time someone makes what looks like a poor financial decision, remember, you may not be seeing the full picture. Because financial stress doesn't just influence what people can buy, it influences how they think. And perhaps the most important investment any of us can make is creating enough financial stability that our brains are free to think beyond tomorrow. If you found this documentary insightful, subscribe for more science-backed videos exploring psychology, economics, and human behavior. And tell us in the comments, have you ever noticed financial stress changing the way you make decisions?